All right, welcome back to another episode of Wellness Unplugged. This is an extra special week because we're getting an episode on Friday, which doesn't usually happen. And I'm here with Angela Shurina. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, it was perfect, John.
Oh, good. And Angela has had quite an interesting life story. She's traveled to many countries around the world. You have probably 1,000 interests, I would think. I was having a read through it on your website. People, if they first encounter you, might know you as maybe the host of the podcast. Is it Smarter, Leaner, Stronger? No, Food School.
Yes, Food School, Smarter, Stronger, Leaner.
There we go. But it didn't start with that. It started in Siberia, of all places, which
Yes.
those of us, let's say, who grew up in North America, we would picture Siberia being this cold and barren wasteland. So what is life like in there? What was life like in Siberia? And do you ever find your way back there?
My parents still live there. My sister just recently moved to St. Petersburg. So Siberia, a lot of people ask me about bears, cold weather, and is it still a prison? Where
like a gulag?
People, for bad stuff. Actually, the city where I grew up, where I was born, and it's still, the same city. It's the center of oil and gas industry in Russia, and that's why it's there. It's one of the biggest cities in northern Siberia, because Siberia, it's like half of Russia.
Yeah,
so people don't realize that's a whole geographical region. And so I'm in the northwestern Siberia. It's kind of like in the middle, all the way to the north in Russia.
Okay.
And it's, now it's 500,000 people, and it's quite a big city. So I can't even say it's anything really specific about it, except that, it's oil and gas city. And most of the people who went there are either work in the industry or they work in other industries serving, people who work in that industry and the whole infrastructure. And I think my upbringing, besides the super cold weather, was quite normal. You go to school, university and everything, nothing special, no bears.
No bears. In northern Manitoba in Canada, you can get in Churchill is one of the places you get polar bears that actually come into the city. So that's something that people genuinely have to be concerned about. So, but it's interesting. So Siberia, you say, is a region that would make up approximately half of the landmass of Russia. Is that right?
Yes, because I think Caucasus Mountains is where kind of it starts, and then it goes all the way to Japan, to China, the border. Yeah, so you can imagine, where I grew up, part of Siberia, it's more Western. People look like people from the West, and then obviously closer to the East, that's where people look. And in culture, there's more similar to people from the East. And we have a lot of, immigrants from China, from Japan, not so much, but Mongolia is also, not so far. So that's, I guess, what people don't realize. Although people do ask me, are you somewhere close to Vladivostok? That is basically border with Japan.
Okay. Yeah, and so just to put it in perspective, like Russia, it has about twice the landmass of Canada, and so Siberia would probably cover an area about the size of Canada, which actually by landmass is the second largest country in the world. So,
the peculiar thing about it is a lot of land, not a lot of people.
Yeah, lots of trees.
Yeah, exactly. And just empty space. Density of population is like 1 person per square kilometer.
Yeah. Well, that's averaged out. It's, could you imagine if you had literally 1 person living in every square kilometer? Yeah, that wouldn't be very functional. So most of the population lives in 1 or 2 cities in that area. Yeah. So you ended up leaving Russia and doing some traveling because you wanted to break free, or I don't know, break free is the right word. You wanted to go experience more. And where did you head to next?
I grew up in this city, Surgut, right, in Siberia. And then I went to university in the city that was 1,500 kilometers or something like that. So, that's when I guess my travels started. And then after that, I went to US as an exchange student. And then, once you go abroad to such a different country, you're like, what else is out there? There's so many places that I haven't seen yet. And then you most people catch this bug, traveling and exploring
totally.
and never get rid of it. So, plus I have gypsies in my bloodline. So,
okay, awesome. So, what was when you hit the U.S.? Was that like the first place you traveled to internationally from Siberia, or?
We went family vacations to Turkey and Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
Ukraine, if you consider it like abroad. My father is Ukrainian actually, so we did some international travel close by. But yeah, that was like my own trip and to a culture that was completely new and unfamiliar to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. My brother lives in Turkey, and there's quite a lot of Russian tourism in Turkey. It's so then what was like vastly different about, say, the U.S. versus growing up in Russia?
I don't know, everything, it's like completely different mentality, like the way people talk, communicate, I don't know, smile to each other, foods, it was just different. Russia was has never been a country with open mindset or open borders for everything, right? And so when I went out of the country, it's like seeing the world for the first time as it is, compared to what was shown, on TV or you could read about.
Yeah, and this is there's a reason why I'm asking this. We're gonna kind of get to that, but so there's this idea, because I lived in Eastern Europe for a period of time as well, and the Eastern Europeans tend to be a little bit more closed off or a little bit colder. Like it takes a while to make a friend with someone who's from Eastern Europe. So then you come to the US and there's like a totally different mindset around this. Was that a little bit of a culture shock?
Yes, I couldn't understand, a lot of communication that was going on like behind the surface, right? Because again, you grow up and you are used to a certain way of communication. Like in Russia, for example, probably in most Eastern Europe, when you say something, you mean it. You don't go like around in circles. You're very direct. And so, sometimes it comes off like in Europe or US as being rude, where you're not being rude, you're just being straight to the point, or like you don't tiptoe around the issue or problem or anything that you would like to request. You just say it as it is. And again, people see it sometimes as rude, sometimes as like you want too much, or so that was difficult. And also we don't smile that much to everyone, and it doesn't mean we don't like the person, we just don't know the person. So that's another thing.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. Because while Poland is distinct from Russia, there's certain sort of cultural aspects that seem to carry over, and two of them were like, one, it was very obvious right away that we weren't Polish when we lived there, because we had like a friendly, people would just say like, you have this different demeanor, you have this friendly kind of open demeanor, and that's not the way that we are. And but the other part of it is the bluntness. Like in Canada, we're like, I suppose it's like we try to be very thoughtful, and you're right, we like sometimes we'll tiptoe around things, we don't want to say it as it is. And I wonder if sometimes that doesn't actually help people. So because where I was kind of steering this, or where I want to go with this, is in Russia, do you see the same degree of like obesity and struggles with weight that you see over here, like in North America?
No, we don't, and that has a lot to do with availability of food, resources in general, of how well off people are. I can say that majority of people in Russia still struggle to get all the food they need. Like, meaning it's still kind of restricted. Like,
right, okay.
People cannot just really buy as much food and products as they want, right? And go out as much as they want. Like, that's not the situation for most of the people in Russia. So that for sure restricts, food, and that makes the whole obesity crisis much, much less. And then people, because of like social economic situation, also people and traditions. People don't go out that often. When we want to celebrate something, we don't like to go out. We like to cook, we like to buy fresh food, make meals, and eating out is kind of like not the best thing. If you have the opportunity to eat freshly cooked meal, then people would much rather prefer that.
Okay.
And then also you have to do a lot of work, in Russia still, like you got to do your things. You can't just sit and order everything and expect everything to be done for you.
Yeah. That's interesting, because we would look at that and say like, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. What a hard way to live. But then we take a look at sort of how we live over here in North America, and we've in many aspects we could say we've kind of cultivated almost like a lazy way of being, because the way the human brain is, we want to use as little energy as possible to achieve our means. That's our primal brain at work. And so if we can achieve everything with the touch of a button on a smartphone, why would we do anything more than that? And we thought that to be an ideal thing, but what we've discovered is that it's actually extremely problematic, both for mental health and for physical health. And so would you think that maybe the sort of Russian people have a higher degree of mental resilience or ability to deal with stress than what you see over here?
It's hard for me to say, it's hard for me to compare mental resilience, but I can say that we've been struggling through a lot of problems, and economically and socially, and still are, I think, more than people in Europe and in most places in US. Like US is not without troubles either. There are,
of course,
areas where people struggle a lot. But Russia as a country, we have this like endure spirit, we're going to get through it. And especially places like Siberia with harsh climate, when most of the time it's cold and it's stress, you physically stress, and you a lot of times don't even realize it. And so you're ready, for stressors in your life. And so you're, I guess, more resilient than, if you're someone living in Florida and you can, I don't know, walk in your flip-flops the whole year round. It's a little bit different. You can, in Siberia, you can, like, during New Year celebrations, very common cause of death is drinking, going out, and falling asleep and freezing to death. Like,
right, yeah. Yeah, that's quite something to think about. And it's funny because I like have a cold shower every day now, and you're not going to find me like trumpeting on social media that I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But for me, it's sort of putting myself into an uncomfortable situation and then seeing what comes up. How do I feel? Do I, and people would think I'm nuts, but I'm like, well, you kind of, in one sense, you get used to it. You never really get used to it. Like, it's always cold. But I don't step in and instantly panic and think I have to leave. So it's just kind of, it's a little way for me to cultivate a little bit more resilience. Because some of my struggles with food, it was really a struggle to be uncomfortable, and food is such an easy, accessible source of comfort. And that's one of the things that maybe contributed to me being obese in my past. And so, you have this mission. You want to help people become healthier humans. What got you on this path?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. I think everything we do in life, everyone, something got us on this path. For me, nutrition specifically and health journey started when I had my autoimmune condition when I was a teenager. I think it was like 11, 12 years old when I got it and was worried about it, and we were going to different doctors trying to figure out why it happened and what to do about it. And so that's where it all started, because doctors didn't know much. They we don't know what it is and how to treat it. Try this, try that, and you're basically on your own. And I'm not saying, to kind of in a negative way. It's just the way, science, we're still learning a lot about human health. We don't know many things. So they didn't know what they didn't know. It's not like, they were bad people.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes we put this I just wanted to chip in. I think sometimes we put this unfair burden of expectation in the medical system that they're going to solve all of our problems, and we get angry and frustrated when they don't have answers. But it's like human health is an extremely complex thing. And, we live in a constantly evolving environment that we have to navigate as well. And so, so this kind of started you on a search for some answers. And if you could just explain for those who might not know what vitiligo is actually as an autoimmune condition.
So it's autoimmune condition, and as we understand right now, I mean, it's still kind of very vague, like what it is and how it happens for everyone. But it seems to be related to leaky gut. Just,
Okay.
You do something with your food, your lifestyle that just like destroys, partially your gut lining, and stuff starts to get into your blood flow, the stuff that isn't supposed to be there, and your immune system is triggered. And for different people, it's triggered and it attacks different tissues, and then the manifestation happens in a different way. Vitiligo is when your immune system starts reacting to your own melanin cells. Those are the ones that give color to skin.
And I don't have a lot of those.
Yeah, we all do,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what happens. You start tanning, or actually not just tanning, but whenever, your system is producing those cells, the immune system is triggered and starts attacking them, destroying them, and you get white patches on your skin because of that, without any color. And so that's what I was getting. It was, I was a teenager. It was disturbing to me. It caused a lot of also like self-esteem issues. Just, I didn't feel comfortable. And, it was visual. So I was really motivated to figure it out. Like I didn't like to stand out in this way specifically.
Yeah.
Doctors couldn't do anything. So the only thing I could do is do my own research, look at what I could control, my food, my lifestyle. And that's what I did. And it took me, like 10 years to figure it out.
Yeah. And I like that you pointed that out, because part of Wellness Unplugged really were about between the before and after, because people would see like you today, if they go and they have a look at your website, which we can throw it up here actually, just for people to have a look at. Let's see. We'll do this one here. Create yourself today. And so what they see today is someone who's strong, who's fit, who's athletic, who's lean, who's very, very healthy. And they sometimes have a hard time maybe conceptualizing that that's somewhere they could get to. Because they don't see like what it took to get there. Because in the age of social media and instant gratification, like we see this before, and I was here and now I'm here. We don't get to see like the details in between that. So 10 years of trying to sort of resolve this issue, this autoimmune condition. What sort of things were you trying?
Well, I started, I don't remember if I was using Google or something else, what was available back then. But I started doing research on internet, and then whatever books I could find locally. And I started getting this, pieces of information that it probably related to your food, that it can be related to your stress. And there is also like traditional, like Chinese medicine or other traditional, kinds of medicines that were explaining it from energy perspective and what herbs you could use and things like that, right? And so I started that, with nutrition, that was the simplest, like easiest way for me to start. And I'm like, okay, seems that these foods don't work for people. There are all these theories already about evolutionary diet that is evolutionary, more suitable for human beings. And then you read about energy and certain herbs. And I was starting to try a lot of things, putting together, practical for myself. Also, I read a lot about how stress affects our immune system and our gut. Even back then, there was information about that. And so I'm like, okay, I'll start yoga and meditation, and work on my visualization skills that probably, if it doesn't help, it's not going to hurt. So why don't I start that? And that's also where my mental, health journey started, mental health development, I would say. I started meditation, I started regular practice of yoga, and so that's how it all started, and I never stopped learning.
Something that I think is really interesting here is you talked about sort of proactively managing stress, and because I think the modern 21st century lifestyle, in one sense, is not nearly as physically stressful as it used to be, but I believe it's more mentally and emotionally stressful than ever before due to our access to nonstop information that can even be potentially emotionally triggering. And so I think we can't just get away with hoping that our stress goes away, that we need to proactively manage it. And so you mentioned both meditation and yoga, and there's actually sort of a little bit of connection between the two anyways.
Yeah.
If someone was going to start meditating, they go, well, I mean, do I need to be a monk in the Himalayas, burning incense or something? Or how do I start?
Yeah. Whenever I work with someone or like a friend comes to me and like, I want to start meditation, what do? I usually recommend apps like Headspace or Waking Up app, just because there is guidance and you don't have to think about what to do, what to think or not to think about, how long. And so it's an easy way to start, especially for someone who doesn't understand at all what meditation is and like what's the purpose and again the whole protocol. So that's where I usually recommend people to start. Apps. And also I try to explain that meditation isn't some practice for monks, like something, I don't know. It has nothing to do with not thinking or trying to change your mind right away. It's just about paying attention to what is. And it's kind of similar to mindfulness. It's just taking the time to sit or maybe, lay down and pay attention to what's happening inside your world instead of trying to live as your thoughts and associate yourself with your thinking process.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I'm a big fan of meditation. I found it really, really helpful as I was navigating both anxiety and depression myself. And paying attention to our internal environment. And when we say that, not just our mind, but actually what's physically taking place in our body can be, because I think we spend a lot of our life dissociating or ignoring the signals that our body gives us, and then misunderstanding the signals our body gives us. For example, there's many things that aren't hunger that we might mistake as hunger, or just any uncomfortable sensation that we turn to something like food or binge watching on Netflix to check out and totally not listen to what our body is saying. So if we were to think about something like listening to our body or tuning into our body, that sounds like a very vague concept. Could you, and this maybe is a bit of a tricky question, but could you maybe shed a little bit of light for someone who might be hearing this for the first time? Like, what does it mean to sort of listen to your body? What might somebody experience when they try to do this?
It's very simple, actually. Try to find quiet space and just sit there and literally pay attention to what's happening, like your breathing, like how your muscles are relaxed, or at some places are tense. Do you have any pain? Like what's going on in your stomach, like your heartbeat? If you can try to feel that connects you to your body in a very powerful way. And breathing, heartbeat, like any pains, like your muscle tension, how your body is positioned, in the world. Like, do you feel the floor? Do you know the clothes? Just getting back to your sensations everywhere in your body. And with practice, you get better. It might seem weird at first, but then, you get better, and it's going to feel really like second nature to you. And I think, after you learn how to feel your body at any moment, it's very hard to do anything that harms your body in any way. That's why I'm so, some people think strict about my foods. It's just because I know how each food makes me feel, and I just cannot continue putting in foods that make me feel not good. It's kind of like self-destructive behavior. Like, why would you hurt yourself?
Yeah. I love that because I wanted to shine a bit of a light on this one too, because I agree. People would look at maybe how you eat and go, I couldn't eat like that. There's no way I could, because maybe food is playing a certain role in their life, and they think, well, I couldn't go without potato chips, or I couldn't go without whatever. But as we start to pay attention to when I eat this, I feel this in my body. All of a sudden it's like, well, maybe actually I don't want to feel that. So what are some foods that you used to eat that you no longer eat?
Well, obviously, sugar, like it tastes good in your mouth, but then your energy go up and then down, and your mood goes up and down, and the next morning you wake up either with headache or in your stomach there is something going on you don't really like, So a long time ago I realized like it's just not something I want to experience every single day. And then also I like to stay in certain physical shape and have certain vitality like radiating from me, and so sugar doesn't allow me to do that, to be like, to feel my absolute best at any moment. But then things like grains, they work for some people, they do not work for me. Like every time I eat something with grains, again, my energy, my mood, I feel sleepy, I feel moody, and I never tested for like gluten or whatever other intolerances, but I just know that it doesn't work for me. It's not a placebo. Yeah. It's been always like that since I was a kid. And I think that was a huge thing that triggered my autoimmunity. Again, I don't have like exact proofs because there was nothing available to me back then. But just one of the food groups that I don't eat.
Now you said that you don't consume sugar, but do you consume fruit?
Yes, I mean processed sugar. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it's good to clarify that, because some people might be like, "Oh my gosh, I shouldn't eat fruit, or fruit isn't healthy." But what makes fruit different than, say, a candy bar?
Mm-hmm. A couple of things. One, delivery method. It matters.
Yep.
It's not just what, it's also how. It always, with everything in life. So fruit, compared to candy bar, has all this water, all this fiber, and then also phytochemicals that make fruit is a whole system, just like our body. You can't separate your arm or your leg and expect it to work exactly the same in the body as outside the body. So with fruit or any food, it's the same. You separate the components and that's it. They're not going to work the same. They're not going to have the same effect on blood sugar, on metabolism, on hunger levels, on everything, right? On our gut microbiome. And again, each fruit has different phytochemicals, different amount of sugars, of fiber, of everything. And that's how it's different from a candy bar, and depends on what candy bar. I don't know, maybe someone is eating candy bar with stevia.
Well, what these food products are essentially is we've taken specific components out of natural food and then tried to recombine them in a way that creates a more pleasurable, like dopamine response in the brain, essentially is what we've done. But we've stripped away a lot of the nutritional value. And I think that's why I really try to distinguish between food and food products. And that's not like my original idea. I think there was a book, it might've been called In Defense of Food. I'm not sure if I've got the title correct.
There are several actually, like Hooked, the recent one I read about that, how, products are manufactured, to make it keep us hooked. Go ahead.
Hooked. Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. I mean, because I studied industrial chemistry, and part of industrial chemistry is food chemistry and flavoring and things like that. And so I don't adopt the stance that necessarily things that artificial flavors and sweeteners are necessarily like toxic chemicals that are going to kill you. But what they do is they alter your perception of taste. They alter your sensitivity so that foods that occur, they're hyper stimuli. So they trigger our brain in ways that a food that occurs in nature is never going to do.
Yeah. And can I add one more interesting thing? People always like hearing about that. When we eat whole foods, our body and our brain, they always try to figure out, okay, we ate this flavor and texture, etc., and it give us these nutrients. You eat strawberry, you get this flavor, and you get a lot of vitamin C, a lot of other phytochemicals. So your brain learns, okay, if I get this flavor, I also get these nutrients. Now you get strawberry flavored ice cream. And you get flavor, but you get a completely different nutritional profile. And then now the map in your brain is really confused. It's like the same flavor, but different nutrients. And so when, for example, your body needs vitamin C, you might start craving strawberry flavored ice cream, just because at some point you did try strawberries with a lot of vitamin C. And so this is, why I personally don't like to have even, healthy protein shakes. like favorite as strawberries, because now,
Right.
okay, I'm gonna get this flavor, but then it doesn't have what strawberries have.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because a strawberry itself has more than 18,000 chemical constituents or parts that make up the flavor of a strawberry. And what we've done in the terms of strawberry flavoring is we try to isolate certain, they're known as aromatic compounds. These organic structures that when they hit our taste buds, they give us. So they're trying to enhance or strengthen the flavor of strawberry and pair it with more sugar than would ever be found in a strawberry. Again, where your brain goes, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then you go to eat a real strawberry and you go, huh, that doesn't taste like strawberry ice cream, and so it really can't compare. If somebody's trying to, let's say, move into eating more whole foods and moving away from eating food products, is there a period of time that it kind of takes to reset the palate and get people used to eating, the taste of real food, basically?
There are two components, right? The taste buds themselves, I think it takes like 10 days to completely, regrow new taste buds. So after that, it's kind of like the sensitivity to different, more, I guess, not as intense flavors gets better. But then, of course, there is this dopamine and other, neurotransmitters hit that you get with intense flavors. Like, I think that might take a little bit longer to rewire. No matter, as you said, no matter how good the strawberry is, it's probably never going to be as intense as strawberry flavored milkshake or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that takes time, to get used to the idea that, food is not going to be as like with that hit that you get to all of your senses. It's not going to be that intense. So I think for different people, it's different. For me, it definitely took a while to completely get, off these foods. Because as any, human being, I didn't know a lot of things when I was growing up, and I did eat those foods with more intense flavors. That dopamine, especially dopamine hit, that's reward system, it takes time to rewire, definitely.
It does, yeah. And so this is why we can say that like foods have, and I try to say something like an addictive-like quality, because I want to distinguish between, say, a narcotic addiction and food. Now, I did suffer from food addiction, but it wasn't necessarily just about specific food products. It was a coping mechanism for me dealing with trauma. But so processed foods are deliberately engineered to have addictive properties. They're made because this isn't necessarily evil per se, but a food company makes more money when they sell more of their product. The more they can create a compulsion to eat it, the more money they make. And it's a lot cheaper to, let's say, just use sort of junk carbohydrates from monocrop grains and throw some sugar and some powerful artificial flavors in there than it is to grow a banana, for example.
Yeah.
Now, you spent some time, I think, in your eating as a vegan. Do I have that right?
Yes, I think overall as vegan about maybe 5 years or so, and then a few years was raw vegan when I was in Thailand.
Okay.
And I developed a lot of neurological problems, as I can, reflect on that from my today's mental state and mental health.
And now that's an interesting statement. I like that.
But and that's what makes me so passionate about nutrition, because it's very hard to step out of your own mind and see how it works and how different reactions you have to the outside world are not actually normal. A lot of vegans actually, for example, suffer with that syndrome, like sticky mind. You get obsessed about things like the cleanliness of a dish or the cleanliness of your food or not perfect people or a not perfect diet. That's actually a quality of the mind. Usually it has to do with B vitamin deficiencies. And once you get those, B vitamins that vegan diets, a lot of are either very low in or deficient in, then your mind is different. Now you're like, okay, this happened. Let's analyze it. Let's move on. And your personality changes completely. And so that was, what was very interesting.
And I mean, I have some, this is really, really interesting for me because I have some vegan friends who I like and I respect, and they're really good people and so on. But the vegan, and vegan is different than plant-based.
Yes.
Vegan is like a lifestyle where you don't want any animal products whatsoever, whereas plant-based is a little bit different. But I think vegans have a reputation for being a little bit nuts sometimes.
There is a reason.
Yeah. And so you talked about kind of eating in a more ancestral way, or sort of more in alignment with how human beings used to eat.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for you now? And how did you make the transition away from being a vegan and into eating animal products again?
Well, my hair started falling out, my hormones all over the place, my mood was all over the place, cravings, why would you stay? I mean,
Yeah.
So, and the like what my diet looks like. So I wanted, to solve all these problems that I started having. And now my principle, of eating, of more ancestral type of eating, is basically don't eat products, eat foods that we evolved eating that do not need any nutritional labels, eat the most nutrient dense foods you can possibly find. I try to always myself, and I try to help my clients to maximize nutrients per bite of food, because the more nutrients you deliver, you maximize your health, your fitness, your resilience. And that's it. That's very simple, and also, of course, there is personal variations. They, again, for me, grains don't work, but I don't necessarily think that we can't eat them, and get like nutritional value. Some people do really well with certain grains, maybe not others. The same, like some paleo people, like that's usually what a lot of people mean by ancestral kind of living. They consider dairy not ancestral, but there were tribes, specifically in my region of the world, that since like the beginning, almost like evolution, they consumed dairy products, right? So I think it's...
And maybe there's a difference between, let's say, if you're getting milk from a yak or a wild beast, or that was domesticated, versus the way that we get milk from cows today, which is raised on, they're not eating necessarily the way they would naturally eat either, and so the milk doesn't have the same nutritional profile as it would have, because now they're being fed to maybe create a certain amount of fat content in the milk. They're trying to create homogeneity, in other words, the milk, and so on. So the milk that maybe your ancestors would have consumed in that region of the world looks very different than the milk that we consume nowadays. And like, people are afraid of fat, for example, in milk, and yet, like, my son who's nursing, it's like that fat is essential for him, and delivery of essential vitamins and nutrients.
So, a couple of things. Definitely, I'm never going to be vilifying any nutrient, because foods are designed to be whole. If this food comes with fat, it's supposed to be with fat. So eat it, right? Be that dairy product or plant-based product. But then also, dairy products, it's not just about the animal and like what it ate, the lifestyle, but also I really separate milk and fermented products. Like, I don't consume milk, I do consume fermented products, because the fermentation process matters. You basically have millions of bacteria that eat, for example, lactose, and they metabolize other nutrients in that product, and they create completely different product. Something, the proteins, the fats, the sugar in milk, it all was pre-digested, changed, and so our digestive system gets something different, right? So I, for example, again, have no problems having like organic yogurt, etc., but drinking milk, no, not for me. I always like either something on my skin or my digestion. So
it's interesting. If I drink milk, I get very phlegmy. So like immediately I get mucus in my throat, and I start to feel congested. So it's really so I haven't drank milk for many years, and it started even as a teenager. I didn't like how I felt, and milk for me always tasted rotten. It's this weird thing. I couldn't explain. I remember one time I actually I was like pouring a jug of milk down the sink, and my mom was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "It's off the milk," and she's like, "No, it's not. It tastes just fine." And so at that point, interestingly, I started drinking soy milk because we didn't know any better at that time. And so just quickly, I know we're running out of time here. I really appreciate you've shared a lot of valuable wisdom here. Where did your handle 1,000-year young come from? What do you mean by that?
I'm a lot like pro longevity, meaning whatever I do in life, it's not just nutrition, but everything. It's long-term perspective. Okay, I'm always trying to marry what I want to do now, experience, eat, work on, and what I want to see in my future, right? And so 1,000 year young, it reflects that. But also, I believe that at some point, we gonna have a choice. Do I want to live indefinitely or I want to die? And I truly believe that the technology, the advances of our medical and other sciences will allow to create this kind of lifestyle lifespan that for me means unlimited. And I'm very passionate about it. And, I do a lot of research and read and connect with authors and all kinds of, scientists, investors. And definitely whenever there is, new thing will come into, our world that can potentially increase our lifespan a lot, I'm going to be trying all of it, as soon as I can. So passionate about longevity, but also, just longevity of everything in our life. It's not about not just about now, but also long term.
Okay. So then if somebody wants to live, I mean, obviously there's certain factors of life that we sort of can't really get around. Somebody might come down with sort of an infectious disease, or they might come down with a terminal illness or things like that. Or you might just have a tragic accident.
Exactly.
So we put those caveats in there, but we say, okay, somebody says, like, I want to give myself the best shot at living a long and healthy life. What would you advise the person to do?
Number one, manage stress. No matter what you do, if you're always stressed, it's not going to work. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. Sleep, huge thing. Like, figure out your sleep on the same schedule, sleep your, 7 to 9 hours. That's what works for most people. And whatever, again, if you're underslept and overstressed, nothing gonna really work for you. Move, that's like we're designed to move. If you don't move, there are gonna be consequences. And then when it comes to foods, eat variety of foods, not products most of the time. And, of course, there are specific, like city fruit and veggies. It's probably a good idea to, eat a certain amount of protein, and there are certain essential fats. And there are a lot of details in nutrition. But, you got to focus on variety. You got to focus on whole foods no matter what you do. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's a really good nutshell.
I guess also social connections. And we humans are social, animals. And it's been, shown that people who live the longest, they have a very good circle of friends, of relatives. They feel, part of the community, and they also have meaning in life. I think why a lot of people are attracted to me personally, and you have like so much energy and drive. But the reason why I have it is because I feel like I have a mission, like I have a purpose in this life. And that's also very important, I think, for everyone to find purpose and meaning in whatever, they do.
Yeah, those are some of the principles that were drawn from, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dan Buettner and his Blue Zones work.
Blue Zones,
yeah. And I don't necessarily agree with all of the principles he puts forward, but I think, I shouldn't say I don't agree with him. It's just that he talks about the plant slant, and I'm kind of moving the other direction in what I call the ethical omnivore movement. Last question: Do you eat any organ meats, like other parts of the animal besides just?
I love them. If for me, when it comes to animal products, I think organ meat is where the gold is. Like, I really, if ever eat muscle meat, I consider it, like it's less nutritious, like compared to like organ meat or shellfish. The organ meat specifically is so nutrient packed that hearts, livers, whatever else I can find, like tongues, cow's tongue, I'm gonna eat it, right? But chicken liver specifically is on my menu every week because it's really easy to find anywhere.
Yeah, I just had pork heart last night, actually.
Never tried it.
It's interesting because actually, because I think because the heart is a really hardworking muscle, it always works. It's kind of can be tough and sinewy, but you can break it down. So it's like a very dark meat. It's actually a lot like beef. And the same thing with chicken gizzards. I thought that was my first step into organ meats with chicken gizzards. It was like, because I do powdered or desiccated liver because I don't really like the texture of liver. So I do desiccated. Okay. I'll have to ask you afterwards what your recipe for liver is that makes it palatable. Pork heart was really good. And I've got some beef heart. And so, but it's this interesting thing because I think for a lot of people, there's this, emotional reaction, like this is gross. Now, if they didn't know what they were eating, I don't think they would have that same sort of visceral reaction of this is gross. It'd be, oh, this tastes good. You know, how should people get around that?
How should people get around it? I don't really know. You know, I grew up on visiting my grandma's farm often.
Okay.
I saw how animals were butchered, you know, chickens and everything. I saw the whole animal, and, you know, my grandma, my mom, they cooked all kinds of parts of animals. So I think it just, you know, came natural to me. I'm like, and so when people find it hard, I don't experiment. I don't know. Think about it as an adventure. You know, you're an adventurous person, so try it.
Yeah.
See how you like it.
And I would say another great way is traveling the world. I mean, in many other countries around the world, it's very common to eat these things. And so in Mexico, super common. We went to a restaurant that served entirely rabbit, and they served like the entirety of the rabbit. In South Africa, we commonly ate tripe and tongue. And so it's like so many other areas in the world do this. And I love how you put like the organ meats are where the gold is, because some people are afraid of like, oh my gosh, the liver is probably filled with poison. I'm like, no, it's not. The liver delivers things to the colon. You know, it doesn't store them. You know, things like the kidneys, and I think the heart is going to become one of my favorite ones because it's rich in coenzyme Q10, which is really important for energy. So this is
chicken hearts. Try them because they're small and they're easy to cook and chew.
Okay, so chicken hearts. I have chicken livers and chicken gizzards in my freezer. I'll get chicken hearts in there as well. So, any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with people, and maybe anything you'd like to promote, or how can people connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. You know, now what I'm really passionate about teaching and spreading the word about is the functional part of nutrition, meaning nutrition, you know, we are built from what we eat. Every single thought, every single state, like motivation or creativity, it depends on building blocks that we get from our food, right? Like this thing, you know, yesterday I gave a talk. I was talking about nutrition for productivity and how this thing that earns most people a living these days, it's so dependent and sensitive to nutrients in our foods. So a person can potentially become a genius, but because they have poor diet, they never get to tap into that potential. Right. You know, and that's what I want people to understand. Food is not just fuel. Food is actually what you're built of and who you are every single day and what kind of work you deliver into this world. There is a reason why, you know, people at the top, almost all of them are into like personalized nutrition. They either have a chef, you know, they have a coach or someone who takes care of that because they understand it matters, like for your performance, for your work, for your, you know, everything you do and you are in the world. So I want people to understand that and to look better and with more attention to your plate and choose consciously what's on it and ask yourself, like, what am I creating in my body and in my brain with this plate of food? What am I like contributing to?
Yeah. Man, so I love that quote. What am I creating in my body with this plate of food?
Yeah, wow. Look, you know, yesterday, for example, I gave this talk and I know that if I eat a lot of yogurt because it has calcium, this important electrolyte and important to, you know, to make neurons fire. I know when I eat it, I'm on fire. Like my brain is like, right? And so I eat consciously. I know what it's going to do to me, to my brain. And I want more people to realize, I want to like revive that nutrition education so people know how to use food to express certain version of themselves. So that's what, you know, the last piece of wisdom. And if people want to learn more, I think my Instagram right now is the best way to connect with me, to see what I'm up to, because I post on stories all the time, like everything I eat, you know, everything that comes to my mind. So I answer questions there all the time, create a lot of videos. So Instagram, that's definitely.
At 1,000 you're young, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just put that in the comments. What am I creating in my body when I eat this plate of food? Really, like, what a powerful question to finish with. So, Angela, thank you so much for the time today. I know you have to run, but I super appreciate it. It's been a valuable conversation, and it's for everybody out there, it's well worth your time to connect with her. She's one of the smartest people you're going to find out here in the world of nutrition, and she certainly is helping create better, healthier, stronger human beings. So thanks again, Angela. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure indeed.
All right. Take care, everyone, and catch you again soon. Actually, this afternoon.